All right, everybody, I'm very excited because today we have with us today to talk about everything from Survivor Winners at War. She's the only two-time player to reach the end in two different seasons without a medical evacuation or anything like that. She is the winner of Survivor Co Wrong. Please welcome the great Michele Fitzgerald. Michele, how are you?
I'm happy. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah,
So
I'm
excited.
happy that you're up for talking about the game. I would, you're such an easy person to talk to. I'm excited to go through a bunch of stuff from the season with you here today. So thank you for coming on board to do it.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Last time that right after I won, I like waited so long to do the podcast, and I was like, I want to do it right after my season wraps. I don't want to wait. I want to get it all of this out of the way so everybody can have their questions answered. Especially during quarantine. So
I feel like we did it quick after the
did we?
season.
I feel like I waited. I like dragged my feet. I kept being like, next Thursday, next Thursday.
Yeah, I
And
don't think you made me wait too long, and you helped me get Sydney, who I think that was the last Survivor interview she did.
Oh my God, my girl Sid. I love her. I love
How is
her.
she? Are you guys still in touch?
She got a house. She's newly engaged. Unfortunately, I don't keep in touch with her as much as I
Yeah,
wish I did. But it looks like she's just thriving. Sydney could do anything and she's successful in it. So I've
yeah.
never met somebody so driven in my life as Sydney.
Sydney, yeah,
Yeah.
she's such a character. I was just like cracking up laughing the entire time that I got to talk to her. I wish she was
Now we
more
got to get
involved.
Debbie.
Debbie, yeah, that would be a great one. That's my on my Survivor podcast bucket list.
I know it is. So we have to get her for you.
Okay, I would appreciate that. That would be fun. I wanted her for Wanners at War, but we couldn't get her for that. But Michele, what have you been up to since the season has been over?
Uh,
Not
not
much.
much, and also
Yeah,
a lot. I don't know. I feel like every night there's something new that I'm partaking in. So
yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, Michele. I'm knocking all the mic. I want to make sure we're got all our backups recording and everything. We can't screw this interview with Michele up.
You don't want to screw it up,
I don't
but
want
you
to.
can only do it once.
Yeah, I don't want to screw it up. I'll have so much regret. Michele, so your story this season was so much about you dealing with your first experience on Survivor, and I guess I knew, but I didn't know, how much the co-wrong experience, how bittersweet it was.
Yeah, it was something that obviously got shown a lot, and people ask like, "Is this something that you were thinking that much about, or was it a narrative that they were pushing for you?" I
Yeah,
don't actually know the whole answer to that. I think it was definitely a chip that I had on my shoulder and something that really bothered me, and so I knew that I wanted to go out there and kind of reshape my image a little bit and just gain a little bit more respect. And I don't know if I did that, but people seem to have flipped the switch a little bit on me. So it's been a refreshing experience this time.
yeah. Well, I'm very happy to hear that you had a more positive experience with Winners at War. I feel like there's not too many people from your cast that say that.
Yeah, I think it's hard because we went out there and the experience itself was very, very challenging and it brought out some ugly sides of people, I think. I don't know. It was draining. It was very, very hard.
Yeah.
So,
Can you talk a little bit about your game plan of, okay, so eventually they call you and they say, Michele, we're thinking about doing an all winter season. Are you interested? I'm on board. And, I talked a little bit with Adam about some of the conversations that you had, but did you have like a game plan of how you wanted to approach this? Or did you have just like a bunch of people just reaching out to you all of a sudden?
So obviously I had a really good relationship with Adam prior to the game. And so when you hear that you're going to be getting a call, you reach out, and not just Adam. I mean, I had relationships. I met Nick and at a charity event when I was with Wendell. So like there was connections and ties there that were really easy to kind of just check in. And
Hmm.
of course you do your check-ins. You're like, hey, could this potentially be an all winners cast? And I think that was the question mark. Like, is it going to be just a few winners? Because then that changes the strategy. Would it be all winners? Because if so, then everybody's kind of on an even playing field to a degree. So a lot of the preliminary strategy was just trying to figure out like what that cast might actually look like. Because if you know the players, you can go in with a little bit more insight.
Hmm.
So that was the game plan for me. I really wanted to keep my options as open as possible.
Yeah.
I might have overcommitted to a few people.
So that's my big question for you is that I feel like that you were so popular, so many people wanted to work with you, at least coming in, but did you have like a real okay, this is my okay, I have layers of like people that I'm talking to or gonna work with, but this is my one true ride or die.
Unfortunately, I did not have that.
Yeah,
I could have, and I think that that's really what got me into a lot of trouble is that
yeah,
of Adam as a person, like him and his dad have come and stayed at my family's house. Like
sure.
I have such a deep tie, like emotional tie to Adam. But then on the flip side, I also have had a pre-existing relationship with Wendell, and I have those same feelings and loyalty to him. And then strategically, Yule had reached out to me, and on like a strategic level, like he was giving me 100% of himself. So how
Yeah.
could I also not value that? So I just got myself in too deep, and I just didn't know which way to go, like as far as who was like my number one. And when that's pregame, it gets really messy. It
Right.
felt really messy for me.
What about Natalie and Jeremy? Were those also people that you had going in that you felt like that you were going to work with, or you just hit it off with them?
So I know Jeremy from Boston, obviously,
Yes.
because
Yes.
you've been there with us before, and I have a really good relationship with his family. So we never pre-gamed or
Yeah.
anything. Just kind of went in, and you know, we knew each other. As soon as we hit the beach, we were just like, okay, we're in it together, right? And it was kind of like not an unspoken, let's do this thing. And Natalie was with him, and it was the same thing. I had only met Natalie once in my life, and it was I was like drunk, just got off of my first season, pre-gaming like outside of a country concert.
Pre-gaming, like drinking before you went to a party.
After
Yes.
no pre-gaming before the concert. What's it called? Tailgating.
Yes.
So
Okay.
I
Yeah.
had just gotten home like literally a week
That's a
prior.
different pre-gaming.
Okay, yeah, yeah, exactly. This is an outside
Yeah.
pregame,
Yeah.
whatever. But we were outside of a concert, and all of these CrossFitters came over, and they like to me and my friends. They were drinking. I'm like, "Oh, you guys are great." They're like, "You want to come back like over to our place and do a shot with us?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And I go over there, and there's Natalie and her sister, and I'm like, "Kim, that girl won Survivor," and I had just gotten home, so I go up to
Hmm.
them and I'm like, "Hey guys, I was like just on the season." They're like, "Yeah, sure you were." I was like, "Oh," they're like
Right.
totally throwing me away, and I'm like, "No, no, no, I literally just got home," and they're like, "Who is this girl? Like, leave me." So everybody thought that we knew each other, but she totally dismissed me when we actually met in real life. So I had no prior knowledge of Natalie, and it's been like a running joke. Like she thought I was like this crazy super fan.
Hmm. Michelle, when you guys got to the beach and it looked like, or you're on your way there, it looked like it was going to be potentially a tribe of men versus a tribe of women. Would you have preferred that? Would that have been a good situation for you, do you think?
No,
No.
probably not. I didn't know any of the women prior to
Yeah.
coming in. I had never met any of them. Yeah, so that would not have. I mean, I think I probably could have figured it out to a degree, but like also looking at me physically, I was probably one of the weakest physical people. So if they were looking to keep the women strong, which I assume at that point they would have been, I probably would have been one of the first targets, if not the first.
Yeah. I, I mean, that's surprising because I feel like that you have these immunity wins, but I feel like that you seem like you're an athlete, and you definitely seem like that you have like a toughness to be an athlete, but you're like a puzzle and memory person.
I am not an athlete by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, there is a name for the type of run that I do, and I used to get made fun of in high school for it. I had to quit any type of sport that was team because I broke people's ankles just by participating. So I swam in high school because that's an alone sport where you can't really do any damage to
Hmm.
myself or others. So I never, I just am not a sports person. And you saw that. I mean, I fell often in this season.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, but you got up.
puzzles, puzzles were my strength, I guess.
Yeah. So going back to the early days at Cele, who were you like aligned with closely? We saw you talking with Jeremy and Natalie. Was that your group?
Yeah, pretty much Jeremy and Natalie. And then on the side, I was working with Adam as well.
Yeah.
I knew that he wanted to do this like kind of double agent where, and he had told me that he wanted to do this prior to the game. I am not like, as we know, Rob, and I've talked about this many times, I am not a strategic mastermind. So me playing some type of double agent, I can barely play just the regular way. So then you have all this other facets going on. I'm trying to juggle the lies, you know. I can lie fairly well, but I can't do like my strategy and that strategy. So I let him handle the double agent, and I just kind of sat back and
Hmm.
he protected me from afar. And so it was me, Natalie, Jeremy, and then me, Adam, separate.
Yeah. But I think in a way, that's almost like best case scenario for you. Even though you're not comfortable with being the double agent, it's almost like if somebody's like, "Hey, let's be secret friends." It's like, okay, sure. Like, that's all of the benefits of the friendship, and then also I don't have to be seen as attached to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what Adam was getting at. Whereas if we could infiltrate both sides and be able to exchange information and
Yeah.
keep our names out of the other people's mouths, we can kind of pull the strings without people realizing that we're the puppet masters. And I think he went in really wanting to play that way. And unfortunately, like so much shit hit the fan over the course of the season. So I don't think it fully played out, but it saved me in a lot of situations. So
Did you feel you had good relationships with the other players who were there? Like, I know eventually you're going to bond with Parvati, but like the Robs and Ethans of the tribe.
like right out the bat or
Yeah.
as we progress. So right out the bat, I mean, I have such a love and affinity for both of them. I think they're amazing. Boston Rob, I found to be freaking hilarious. I couldn't help but follow him around, probably like a lost puppy. I was like, Rob, take me fishing with you. Teach me. I couldn't
Okay.
help it. I went into like a 10-year-old Michelle watching
Hmm.
Boston Rob on my
Yeah.
titties.
And you guys have that really cool scene where he's talking to you about your win, and he's playing the ring game. He's like, "So how old were you when the last time I played?" Like, okay, and then you were 9 when I went to go play in Marquesas.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I have a really good relationship with him. Like
yeah,
we were pretty tight out there, at least from my perspective. Who knows what he thinks, but I lean on him a lot for like
yeah.
guidance and just generally to just shoot the shit and have fun. I found him to be a really fun person. So
Yeah.
yeah, we have a good relationship.
I think he has that gear of like that he's like a like older brother, like can play that role. Like Andrea has talked a lot about that from like Redemption Island. Like that's like the like he can like go into that mode also with people in the
Yeah.
tribe.
And what's interesting is like when I first got cast, we do psychological profiles, which So Dr. Liza was looking at my profile before I had got cast, and she said, "Your profile almost matches identically to Amber's." And so I had told him that, and he's like, "I kind of see it. Like I see some personality similarities." So I found it to be really interesting. I found it interesting that he like saw that as well.
Yeah.
So
Wow. I didn't know they keep that kind of like detailed, like who your exact personality matches, like a
yeah,
BuzzFeed
and
quiz.
I was a little bit offended. Not that I don't love Amber, but I was like, I wanted to be like Parv. So I was like, "Are you sure? Can you check those stats?"
Hmm. I feel like that you have like a little bit more of like a fire than Amber does. With
I
all due respect to Amber,
I don't know. Maybe Amber's just hiding it. Right? If Amber was from Jersey, maybe she'd have a little bit of that.
maybe she's that she's too far west in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
All right, so when you went into that first tribal council vote, did you have any suspicion that Natalie was going to be the target?
I had no idea it was going to be Natalie. Adam had told me that it was going to be somebody from my side, and
Yeah,
that I was going to be kept out of the loop. So because I was anxious at that point, Adam's name was being thrown around, and I told him, I'm like, Adam, you are in freaking trouble. Yeah. So Adam basically just told me. He just said that he knew that it wasn't going to go the way that I had anticipated it going. So when I got to tribal, I mean, I saw the writing on the wall, I think, but I had thought it was going to be Danny because Danny had seemed like
yeah,
she was with us, and she honestly looked like she was kind of the weaker. Like if you were trying to keep the tribe strong, she was kind of playing both the sides, and acting a little bit sketchy. So I thought that it was actually going to be her and not Natalie. I was very surprised it was Natalie.
Did you have a relationship with Danny in the early going?
I tried to. I obviously like her as a person, and
Yeah.
I tried to connect with her, but she devolved pretty quickly from my perception.
Yeah. When you say devolved, like she just like wasn't handling it well.
I think that the game was moving at a warp speed,
Yeah.
and you have to be prepared for that. And I think obviously what comes with that is a lot of deception, a lot of flopping back and forth. He said, she said, and you kind of have to have like guts of steel to be like, okay, they're throwing it on me. I get it. Let's figure out how to throw it onto. But as soon as anything would come her way that was a bit of a curveball, she would freak out and kind of
Hmm.
lose her cool. And then that put more and more kind of heat on her. She didn't have like a good bounce back.
Can you compare what it was like to play in this season with what it was like in Co Wrong? Was Co Wrong anything like this?
No. Ko Wrong was, oh my God, it was a nice leisurely stroll compared to this.
Yeah.
This was a marathon and a sprint.
Hmm.
That was a nice leisurely walk in the park.
Okay.
It was
Because
crazy. It was so different. I think my first season, I was having a ton of fun. I was really like loving the experience of just being on Survivor. And this time it was, yeah, and I didn't have to go to tribal until so long on my first season. So this time I had to hit the ground running. The speed,
right.
it was moving so fast. The mind games and the social aspect of it was all just totally scrambling me. So it was so hard. It was so
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we talk about like the new school game and it's gotten faster, but that the way that Co Wrong was filmed, it was Survivor 32, but it was filmed before Second Chances, and I think a lot of the like faster parts of the game, I think really Second Chances, I think was the season was with voting blocks and stuff like that, and so even though you guys your season aired second, I think that a lot of the stuff that really ended up being the like really like fluid parts of the game probably started to really come to the surface in 31.
Yeah. And you have this perception too that like all of these people have won before, but the way that now they're playing these really fast games, these flashy games, you're trying to figure out like, and you're trying to factor in all these curveballs on top of like the mind games. It was just so intense. And
Hmm.
I felt like I was spinning around. I could
Yeah.
not get traction. It was very challenging. There were bits of the game where I felt it did slow down to maybe that pace of Co Wrong, maybe a few days, but otherwise it was pretty much full steam ahead the whole time.
All right. So after Natalie goes home, you were blindsided. We don't really get to see too much of, how you and Jeremy were handling that. Did you guys come up with a game plan of how to get back in the majority with the group? Because eventually, and very quickly, you guys are going to be back in a really good position in the Sele tribe.
Yeah, so as soon as we got back, I pulled Jeremy away almost immediately just to make sure that A, he knew that I wasn't in on it, which obviously he did, but
Hmm.
B, also just to make sure that we were on the same page with our strategy moving forward. And I said, I don't think that this is worst case scenario for us, in fact. Like now we're the people who they can pick up and we can be that extra vote for them. Sometimes it takes being on the wrong side of the vote to like for people to come back in and be like, okay, you're wounded. Let me take you under our wing. So I knew that it
Right.
wasn't really like end for us. I didn't think just because we were out of that vote that we were the next targets per se. But Jeremy went in and he's like, all right, I'm gonna give it to him. And I'm like, don't do that. And he's like, no, this is a plan. I want them to feel like that I'm irritated so that they take me. So we had different strategies. Everybody pulled me aside and I was like, oh, thanks guys. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like that happened a couple times this
Yeah.
season where somebody's saying to you, "That's it, Michelle. I'm gonna go nuts. That I can't. I'm done with this." And yeah, you're like, "No, I don't think that's the right move."
I don't think it is the right move because you know what? When you burn a bridge today, you might need it tomorrow and you'll be regretting having to try to swim in the current to
Hmm. Yeah.
get to the other side. So
Now, I thought that's something that you've done over the course of your Survivor career is that you will vote for people that are your allies, who are going to go out if that's where the numbers are going, and then also you vote for people who don't go home and they don't get mad at you.
Yeah. Well, I try to always be in the majority, and I know that that sounds horrible. That's probably
Hmm.
not the best gameplay, but I do prefer being in the majority
Yeah.
vote. Obviously, that didn't work out for me a lot this season. But when you vote somebody out, I think you just have to be like, listen, nothing personal, damage control. And I
Yeah.
don't, nobody ever seems to be too mad at me. I think it's something that I was talking about, I forget who I was talking about it with, but it's the style of relationship that I try to harvest with people, which is basically like I want people to be invested in our relationship and not overly invested to the point that they take it personally if I betray them. You have to walk that fine line of like, I want to keep this person around and I want them to protect me because I know that they'll be a loyal number for me, but not too invested where at the end of the day they're going to be like, oh, that Michele, she really like
Hmm.
foiled me. She really hoodwinked me. So I
Yeah.
think it's just keeping that balance.
I always like it when you say hoodwinked.
Thanks. I don't know. I don't know. It seems to, things get in my mind and then they just stick and then I use them a lot. And my sister always bashes me on the head for it. So
Yeah. When you voted out Julia in Survivor Go Wrong, or voted against her, was that something where did you take that into this game where it's like, hey, I'm gonna be able like I'll vote against my allies and I'll do it in a way where they're not gonna be mad at me when I do it.
I feel like I never really want to vote against my allies,
Hmm.
obviously, but the reality is that for somebody like me, I have to play fluid game. I'm not a Tony where I'm like bulldozing and I'm necessarily creating the strategy. So for me, it's playing fluid, and that
Hmm.
sometimes does mean that you have to go against your alliances. So
Yeah.
I, yeah, it's unfortunate when you have to write your friend's name down, but you have to hope that they'll forgive you.
Yeah, but I think that sort of that ability that you have, I think that really was able to display itself in people bequeathing fire tokens to you. People were getting voted out, people that you were voting for, and they'd say, "Oh, I give my fire token to Michele, give fire token to Michele." So I felt like that was actually a good barometer of how you're able to have people go out of the game and then still have positive feelings towards you.
Yeah, I think so too. And I was actually really, really proud of how many fire tokens I received. I think I don't know stats or anything, but I think I did receive the most out of anybody in the season.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that if that, if fire tokens to me, that's like a vote of confidence. Like here, I'm giving you my one thing, like that I have in this game, this one power that I have left, right? Because when you get obviously you have a chance to get back in on edge, but when you get your torch snuffed, this is your one beacon of power, and you give it to the person who you want to do well. And so I found it really interesting that people would give me their fire tokens, but then ultimately not vote for me at the end. I found that to be an interesting concept because if you want somebody to do if you want to vote somebody at the end, then you
Hmm.
want them to do well. Not why not give them your fire tokens? But maybe it's a more personal thing versus
Yeah.
looking at as a whole. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting discussion. I think it ties into some of the stuff that Sarah was talking about with the gender bias discussion, and it's something I've been talking about this recently. That I feel like that the social game is which I feel like is your superpower, and I don't know if there's too many people that are on your level in terms of just being such a likable person out there that everybody wants to be around. And I really mean that as a very sincere compliment. I think that you are tops, and I mean, all of the survivors that I talk to, all are super positive about you, and you're a fun person to be around and a fun person to talk to, and I think that shows. I think that social part of the game where you have these relationships, I think that at the final tribal council, I almost feel like has been devalued, even since you won in Survivor Go Wrong, where I feel like there's so many questions at that final tribal council about like, well, show me the moves that you did, as opposed to show me the relationships you built.
Yeah, and I knew going into that tribal council that my my narrative was going to be an uphill battle. I knew that I probably would not be getting any votes going into that tribal just because of who I was up against. But in general, I think I did a good job of summarizing my game and my strengths. And I that's really all that you can do at the end of the day. But it is like, what are these people going to value? And it's very, very hard to show people when you're not on the right side of the numbers that you still manage to create all these relationships, and that does hold value. So it is hard. People saw the backlash that happened on Co Wrong,
Yeah.
and a jury doesn't really want to necessarily be part of something like that. But in general, I was going into this game with this preconceived notion of like, okay, well, Michele maybe is bottom tier winner, and would have had to done a lot more to prove that I was worthy of winning the game than say a Tony. If Tony played my game and got to the end, Tony would have a higher chance of winning that game just because he's Tony. If I played Tony's game, I still might not win because I'm still Michele Fitzgerald. So I think that there is some type of bias as well, just going into the game with what your previous gameplay was like and what threat level you came in on.
Yeah. So I think that this is a good way to tie it back to talking about the Ethan vote, which I watched your video on CBS.com, and you talked about that. You felt like that this was your best move of the game, the Ethan vote. And Ethan is somebody who, at least in my opinion, was minding his own business, and he ends up being a target here for you and Jeremy. I'm assuming that you wanted to protect Adam here on this vote. And Ethan is somebody who, if he just gets to the end, he's going to walk away with all the votes, right?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because Ethan plays a similar game to me. So
Yeah.
how is that, what if we're talking gender bias in social games and such, like how does that matter? But anyways, besides the point, I think I'm proud of the Ethan vote in general, just because it was played pretty well, not because it was Ethan that was the victim, but because of mine and Jeremy's relationships that were still in the game and keeping those really pure and maintaining them. It wasn't that we didn't want Ethan to move forward in the game. It's that we wanted everybody else to move forward in the game. So it was, how did we get our motives to be what actually worked that night? And obviously everybody was looking at Parv to be the one to go.
Yeah.
And when we found out that Adam kind of ratted out that plan to Rob, we were able to shift the plan onto somebody who we wanted, because we had a relationship with Rob and we had a relationship with Parv. We were able to save those relationships while also alienating the person who we also wanted to keep, or who I also wanted to keep, who would probably flip the vote away from Ethan, and who ultimately what could potentially play double agent. So it was a really good plan for me and Jeremy, probably not for almost everybody else in the game, but it was a really good plan for me and Jeremy.
Yeah, I have a couple of other questions about that. For Denise and Ben, I don't know why they went along with this plan.
This was a hit them right at the last minute.
And you were the one, telling these, you're taking them off into the woods and you're telling them about, here's what we're doing.
Yeah, my plan in general with that was, well, Jeremy was like, listen, can you have those conversations and see if they're willing to do it? I think at that point, Jeremy did not want to get his hands dirty, especially flipping it on an old schooler. If Rob or Parvati found out, I think he would have been in deep trouble, and he knew that. So I was like, all right, fine, I'll do the dirty work. I had good relationships with them. So I just went and I was like, listen, our plan is busted. This is the 11th hour as well. So, sometimes these 11th hours are good for strategy. I was like, our plan is busted. Adam betrayed us. Adam can't know what's going on, but we got to flip the vote, because if they have anything, we're screwed. So they, out of, I think, fear and also anger at Adam, were pretty easy to get shift to our kind of narrative there.
Yeah. So then Boston Rob, Adam talks to him and he comes over and he's like, oh, hey, I know the whole plan. And you and Jeremy both try to say like, no, that's not happening. It's not Parvati's not going to. Was Parvati still the plan? Were you guys lying to Boston Rob at that point?
We had went over there to discuss our options.
Yeah.
And we were discussing our options when he came barreling over, acting like a madman. And we were just like, okay, well, what are we supposed to say? And we wanted to shift things up, and this gave us the perfect kind of ammunition that we needed to shift the vote. So
Hmm.
it was great for us.
Yeah. You guys handled that very well, as opposed to like earlier in the season we saw when Boston Rob like came at Ben directly. Like it's very easy to get caught up in like cross examination from Rob.
Yeah, I think he comes in really aggressively, but to be honest, like Jeremy's from Boston. I'm from Jersey.
Hmm.
I've been a waitress before. I've been on the wrong side of people who are aggressively angry at me if I screw up their travel reservation.
Yeah.
So you know how to handle it. And I think maybe somebody like Ben has never dealt with that type of forward like
Hmm.
conflict or conversation before. But
Yeah.
me and Jeremy are pretty much like, all right, we laugh it off, we diffuse, we know how to like roll with the punches on it. So
Hmm.
I think we did a good job of it just because of where we're from, to be honest.
Okay, so Ethan goes out, and
Yeah.
then it looks like okay. So you and Jeremy have this relationship with Rob and Parvati. You can go a couple of different ways. Were you considering letting Adam go at this point?
So you know what? I just talked to Adam about it, and we were kind of trying to figure out the numbers. If we had not swapped, how it would have went. And Jeremy was pretty hot on getting Adam out at that point,
Yeah.
as was Parvati, as was Boston Rob. I obviously didn't want Adam to go, and neither did Denise. Adam didn't want to go, so it would really hinge on Ben. And Ben is such a wild card. I think at that point, Ben was probably closest with me and Denise.
Yeah.
So I do think Adam probably would have been safe. But again, Ben is such a wild card. Like,
Yeah.
who knows? So I think Adam would have been safe. I think probably Boston Rob or Parv would have went. But
Yeah. What kind of relationship did you have with Ben over the course of the game? Because you guys spent a lot of time together.
yes, we did. We started off strong. You know, he was super paranoid leading into the game. He was always the one being like, oh, I'm not looking for idols, like pretty frantic, pretty, yeah, just paranoid in general. And I actually really liked him. I thought he was a nice guy, kind of silly, kind of quirky. And then when we split and when we came back together, there was a lot of heat on me, Wendell, and Nick.
Yeah.
And it almost seemed to me that he took it personally. Like I had betrayed him by staying alive. And I'm not really sure that at that point our relationship was fully devolved. I mean,
Hmm.
he hated me, I think, at that point, and ever since now, you know, he didn't hate me on the level of maybe that him and Adam or him and Jeremy had conflict, but
Yeah.
for sure was never even willing to have any type of strategic discussion with me.
Viewed you as one of the enemies.
I was an enemy, yes, and I don't think it made it any better that I was also in with Jeremy, who he was also having conflict with. So
Okay.
yeah.
So, all right, let's talk about the swap. Unless there's anything else from Cell or original Cell that you want to talk about.
Nah,
No.
sell it.
Okay.
Peace
All right.
out, LA. Oh,
All right.
not yet. Wait, I
Yeah.
go back to shitty
Here's
stuff.
where the story takes a turn. Okay. Now
Here's
you
where it
really
all falls apart for Michelle.
well, I don't know. I don't see it that way. I mean, I thought that this was super impressive that you managed to come out of this and go through these two tribal councils, being in the numbers minority here. Three guys who are seemingly all in an alliance, super tight from the original Dakal. They come in with you and Parvati, and doesn't look too great on the surface. But I don't think does your name even come up here in any of these discussions?
It does not, and I'm very grateful for that because if I were them, I probably would have voted me out. But thank God,
And they should have, right?
I think they should have. Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. I think they should have. And a lot of my fear was that when Parv had gone, they were going to realize that they would be putting their own games in jeopardy by, because we were all, so obviously transparently, me, Nick, Wendell, and Yule were all in a pregame alliance. So it
But
was
not all to all
together.
together. Okay.
All together. So for us to land together and then to have to vote somebody out was a pretty tricky situation.
It was actually like a bad scenario to all
It's
be
the
on the
worst.
same tribe. Yeah.
It's the worst scenario. It's the absolute worst scenario. And unfortunately for Parvati, she got swapped into a situation that she never could have gotten out of. And that's just the reality of it. And I feel bad for Parv for that situation because obviously I wanted to continue working with Parvati, but there was no way.
Yeah.
A lot of the conversations that were happening were not whether or not Parvati was going to go, it was how it was going to get done. And obviously you saw me wanting to write Wendell's name down so that we could get her fire tokens. Nick, and I were all on board with this because we said we're in an alliance together. The more fire tokens we have as a group, the more power we'll have because we don't know what happens in the game. Unfortunately, Wendell was not on board with his name being written down. So we kind of hashed out a plan where Yule would give Wendell his fire token to appease him before the tribal council. Once I received the fire tokens, Yule would get his fire token back and I would give him one of Parv's. So that was most of the conversation. The strategy conversation wasn't around who was going to go. It was about how they were going to go. It wasn't about who was going to go, unfortunately.
Okay. Can you talk through the Wendell situation on the show? Because it certainly seems like it was maybe less confrontational in real life than it was on the show. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We actually came home and we were like, oh great, they're gonna show us like being super lovey, and we were like a little bit paranoid about that. And definitely didn't go that direction. So but they could have painted it however they wanted. If they wanted scorned exes, they would have gotten that. If they wanted people who were like rekindling a relationship, they would have gotten that. They really had the material that they wanted to work with, and they do a good job of kind of feeding you the lines to get you to say the things that they want you to say.
Yeah.
I definitely felt victim of that. I think Wendell did a better job of potentially not falling victim to that. So
Well, from your perspective, were you looking at it like almost like what Adam wanted to do? Was that the same as what Wendell wanted to do with like, hey, like let's make it seem like we're not on the same page, or let's throw people off the scent and not let people know that we actually are good? And maybe was that like a miscommunication between you and him being on the same wavelength?
So we had talked about how we were going to, I think a lot of people in the Survivor community knew that we kicked it. So it was about managing like the perception of our relationship. Obviously coming in as pairs is frowned upon. So our plan was just to pretty much tell how it all had shaken out and just say like, listen, it's kind of awkward, whatever. But really, we're working together. And we told each other everything. I think more so than him trying to play like, here's the distance between us. The way that he spoke to me was the way that he said it himself, was the way that he approached things with Dom. I'm just going to shoot it to you straight. And I'm not really going to worry about, sugarcoating things or saying it nicely. Unfortunately, if you had watched my last season, that doesn't necessarily work the way, talking that style of way to me only incites frustration and anger. It doesn't, bode well for strategy talk when it's with me. So I don't think that it was actually meant as a gameplay. I think that's just how he chose to strategize.
Yeah. Did you feel like that Parvati was then trying to like stoke the flame? Did she know that that you guys actually were okay and she was trying to or do you think that she felt like there really was a conflict here and she was trying to like turn that spark into a huge fire?
Well, I was feeding her pretty heavily the narrative of scorned eggs.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted her to feel that there was no way that I was going to flip on her. So I really, really played into it. Like, oh my gosh, this is so awkward. Like, oh, he's so annoying. And which is probably how they got as much content as they got on that topic. But I never wanted her to really feel in danger. Like, I wanted her to feel like I was her saving grace in that game. So I definitely played it up a bit for Parvati. So she was just having fun with it more so than probably trying to create more tension. And ultimately, I did the same thing with Yule because I didn't want Yule and Wendell to start looking at me. So I just made it like how he's talking to me so that he would look at Wendell instead.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not so great for Wendell's edit. But.
Yeah. So this actually is probably a really complicated situation for you where, you are the bachelorette here. Everybody wants to work with you. And, that everybody doesn't think that they're going to be the person who you won't pick. But in your head, you actually have to pick these people and kind of rank them from like 1 to 4, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I felt this is probably, I would love to say that this was the hardest part in the game for me. But obviously, it progressively gets harder and harder for me. So But
Yeah.
up until this moment in my Survivor career, what we're probably on day 60 something of my Survivor career at this point, or 50 something, it was the hardest point of any game that I had ever played. And I was just torn up. I was like, I love all of these people. In any other scenario, in any other stakeout, these are the people that I would want to move forward with. So it was really like emotionally challenging for me. And I had to figure out, okay, who do I actually think that I can move forward in this game with? And who do I like really don't like outside of this game? Who do I really not want to burn? And I
Hmm.
could not wrap my head around potentially ever like screwing Wendell over to the point that like we wouldn't have a relationship outside of the game. And I think that impacted some of my decision making.
Yeah. Do you guys talk about before you go to those tribal councils of like, hey, like let's go back and forth at tribal council to really, make it seem like we're, not on the same page?
No.
Okay, I mean, is that real? It's like it's hard because I know that at tribal council sometimes you put on an act for the other players. You're trying to trick people, but it's hard to know where does like the choreography end and where does like the truth begin.
And that I think is the tricky thing about this Wendell situation in particular is that it got messy for me as well because I'm like, okay, I get you trying to put distance between us, but when does that become personal? And
Hmm.
for me, obviously, it somewhat did get personal, and I was like, what's going on here? And there was a lot of things that he said, side things like, if you all had just like stuck with us, we wouldn't be in this situation. I'm like, then who would be in this situation? I would be on the other side. So there was a lot of like
Hmm.
side things that were going on that like just got to me. And I honestly think that he could have just been playing it up and maybe I was just misreading it and taking it too personal. And that's where I don't know. I'm just
Hmm.
not sure where the miscommunication was happening. I'm not sure.
So the next vote, when Yule is ultimately going to go home, you also have a surprising amount of power here in this decision. Also, in terms of like who's it going to be. I wonder if you did you consider voting out Wendell here in this spot, because I kind of feel like that things at the merge I think play out a lot differently if you show up with Yule and Nick instead of showing up with Nick and Wendell.
Absolutely. My game would have looked completely different and in a much more positive way. I think that if I had kept Yule had laid out a final three plan with me and exactly how we were going to get there. You know, he had thought already 15 steps ahead. And I had said, like, listen, this is great, right? If I go with Yule, here's the straight and narrow plan to the end. If I go with Wendell, here is this wide variety of things that could happen. Like it's like taking the narrow road or taking the wide road. So
Yeah.
I felt I really was so torn between it. And obviously I had so much love for Yule too that I was I don't know what I'm doing. And Nick really made the final ultimate call because I was just like back and forth, back and
Yeah.
forth. He was like, ultimately, I think Yule's gonna win this game. I don't want to move forward with him. I'd rather move forward with Wendell. And I said, fine, you make a decision so that I don't have to.
Hmm.
But it was really somber around camp that day. I made a whole speech like, listen, these were my final four. It was a big bummer. Everybody was upset,
Yeah. Uh,
fortunately.
So ultimately, then you're going to show up at the merge with Nick and Wendell, and I really expected it to be on the show that people were going to be why did you guys vote out Yule? Um, with I guess no offense to you, but I feel like that for the original DeKalb tribe, why did you vote out one of our people to keep Michele in the game? Did you sense that from the other players?
Yes.
Yeah.
I definitely sensed I definitely sensed exactly what I thought might happen, which is like, what the hell? Why is this girl around? Also, like I think Ben was like the one putting a lot of the heat on me. He would
Hmm.
grill me all day, fact checking, and then he would run to Nick and try to get Nick's story about exactly what went down. And when our stories didn't completely match up, they used it against
But
us.
what was he mad about? Was he was saying that okay, oh, so this proves it. Michele and Wendell do have a relationship.
Yeah, I think he was upset about that. I think he was trying to figure out too, because I was at that point like, no, guys, I'm not with Wendell. Like, don't worry. Like, this just crazy tribal council happened, whatever. And
Hmm.
I was still acting like I was putting as much space, and so was Wendell, between us as possible. But unfortunately, like they kind of read through what actually happened and figured it out. So
Yeah. So they left you out on the Wendell vote, and again, this is like your strong suit. You would have been happy to write Wendell's name down and send him out and take his fire tokens, right?
I probably would not have. But
You wouldn't have written his name down. You wouldn't have gotten his fire tokens.
I don't know if I would have written his name down. I probably would. I don't know. I'm trying to put myself back in that place, but I hate getting left out of the vote, like I said
You
before.
wouldn't write his name down? You wrote down Julia's name.
I know, but that was different because it really needed, it was like pretty much needed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would have. I don't know. I hear it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I hate playing
You
this,
said in the episode, why didn't you guys tell me? I would have voted Wendell out. Were you saying that?
But I always say shit like that to reintegrate myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I always do. Like, guys, I was telling you the truth. What the hell? Like, why would you not tell me? So but I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Can you talk about a little bit at the merge? Were there any people that you felt like that you had an in with where that you could have got something going, or did you feel like very much that you were sort of ostracized from coming in with Nick and Wendell?
I was pretty ostracized. I think I knew that I could have my relationship with Jeremy, but the way that the tribe swap happened, like there was this really weird dynamic between Sarah, Ben, Sophie.
Yeah.
And Tony got brought into that because of his relationship with Sarah. And so there was a core there. And I didn't know how Ben somehow had integrated himself into that core so deeply. And by default, Denise also got brought into that to a degree. And I was left completely like, wait, those would be the people that I would probably try to reconnect with because they were on Selfie 1.0. So I was kind of floundering around. I didn't really have relationships with anybody else. Everybody who I was working with was either voted out before because Boston Rob, Harv, everybody from Selfie, Selfie 1.0 was pretty much gone with the exception of Ben and Denise and Jeremy. And so it was a weird dynamic. Kim kind of threw me a bone at that point and was like, yeah, I'm willing to work with you. Same with Sophie a little bit. And Tyson obviously was super ostracized and kind of in the same boat as well. So it was awkward.
Did you have an idea of like where Yule had like sort of like a path of what it was going to be? Did you have any sort of like a sense of like who were the people that you wanted to get together in a group at this point, or are you just fighting for your life at this point in the game?
No, I was fighting for my life every day. I said I did not care who I got to the end of the game with. I just wanted to have a strong enough story to win it. And I think people play the game differently, obviously. But I just don't have the privilege of playing the game thinking like, you know what, I'm going to choose this person and this person to go to the end with. I've never played that way. I've always had to just hope that my storyline was strong enough to carry me to the win rather than having the power to really choose who I want to go with.
Right.
So.
And as we know,
I don't need to be carried, bro.
Yeah. That's right.
I don't.
So at this point, Wendell has gone home, and now the next vote is going to be the Adam vote. But it seems like that there's some momentum of like Adam is talking with you and with Nick, and he wants to get a plan together to vote out Sarah. Did you think that was going to work?
I wanted it to work really bad, actually, and somehow it had gotten. I don't really know who necessarily was in that, but I thought that it had some traction. But I think somebody whispered it to Sarah. The word got out to Sarah. I haven't rewatched the season, so it's not like the most known for me.
So in the episode, then eventually, so Denise says something to Kim, and Kim and Tyson say like, "No, we shouldn't write down Sarah," and then it changes to Adam around that point.
It would have been a really good move to get it. Obviously, it would have been a good move to get out Sarah, and I do think a lot of people were on board with it. But again, this is one of those times in this game where, especially right after the merge, you're not sure who's in bed with who, right? So saying the wrong thing to the wrong person has this ripple effect where ultimately Denise said something to Kim, who she had a relationship with on the merged tribe, not knowing Kim's prior allegiance to Sarah from DeCall 1.0.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, it gets out Denise's number one alliance from Cele 1.0. So the merge is so strange because you're just not sure how integrated people are from that swap tribe.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point because, you have these huge merges where, what is this, like 11, 12 people? You have people that have pre-existing relationships, people that have been on all three tribes at this point. It's very hard to like get a vote. Of course, it ends up being like the easy vote for these first couple of votes out of the merge because nobody can make a big move.
Yeah, people were super frustrated with that, especially I think Adam and Denise and Nick,
Mm-hmm.
because those were the three names that just kept coming up as three
Right.
easy votes for some reason considered
Yeah.
easy. So they were just like, why is it just coming down to this? Like, why is nobody actually strategizing? And I think Nick actually said something to that degree at Tribal.
Yeah. Well, I think at this point also that the lions versus the hyenas has taken hold where people are like, hey, if we don't vote out these hyenas, they're all going to get together and they're going to take us out. That's the only way that we can win. How do you combat that when you're out there and there's this idea of, well, you're a threat to me because you're not perceived as a lion of the game like we are?
Well, this is basically like the same thing as like meat shields to a degree, right? It's just a new way of saying it. But I think it's interesting the people who thought that they were considered lions versus hyenas, because for Ben to consider himself a lion when he actually more played like a hyena in this game, I don't know. I thought it was really interesting the way that people self-titled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. You also, at this point in the game, end up getting the opportunity that Parvati sends in from the Edge of Extinction, the 50-50 coin, sends it your way. Did you feel like, in hindsight, and this is the first time somebody can name their own price, did you feel like that? Did Parvati do you dirty in a way? Did she extort all of your fire tokens that she had to have known that how many you had? She asks you for a huge ransom in fire tokens.
Hey, respect to her. I mean, in reality, this is what we're all doing, right? Like, I voted Parv out to get her fire tokens. That was strategic.
And she got them all back.
And she extorted me from mine. And ultimately, actually, it worked like a perfect marriage. Like, she gave me something that I needed, the fire tokens.
Yeah.
Then I had something that she needed. She gave, and so it was an exchange of goods. Ultimately, it benefited us both. So it worked great for both of us, I think.
Michelle, in the first guess, I thought like, wow, this was a big overpay for the 50-50 coin. But in hindsight, fire tokens were not worth that much in the game.
Yeah, and we really didn't know what other like things were coming in. So at that point, I don't think I had seen the Houdini. I don't know if I had seen the Houdini work yet or the Seal Vote. So I didn't know what advantages were coming in, and I didn't know if it was I didn't know if they were coming from the edge or how that was all functioning. So for me, my thought process was, okay, maybe when you get 4 fire tokens, you receive some type of advantage.
Oh, maybe.
I wasn't exactly sure how it was working, so I'm brainstorming all of these things. And so I say, you know what, maybe I'll hold off, and when I get another fire token at 5, then I'll get something better. And, and the producer is like, but how do you know if that's how it works? Like, and then my mind's thinking, maybe that's not how it works. And then I'm thinking like, listen, Michelle, you've played this game now how many days? You've never, ever had any type of advantage in your pocket. It might just be nice to have something, even if it's a 50% chance, to have something to just keep you warm at night and feel a little bit better about your odds when your back is against the wall. So ultimately, I was like, you know what? Fire tokens are going to be worthless if I'm leaving tomorrow.
Right.
So I might as well have a little bit more security.
Yeah. And in hindsight, what were you going to do with those fire tokens? Buy a tarp?
Yeah, I know. And really, I was getting a lot of shade for like, hey, why would she buy a 50-50 coin? But then look at what people had got after that. They had got a disadvantage.
Yeah.
And then an extortion advantage where you can extort somebody else. So really, I actually got the best thing that came post-merge.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of great stuff that was coming in.
No, not a lot of good stuff. So thank God I didn't hold out.
Yeah, because you would have been a target for being, getting the extortion or something like that.
Exactly.
So, Michelle, I actually was on the News AF podcast with Tyson this week. We were talking about that. There is a study that shows that people who leave their decisions to flipping a coin are happier than people who don't. If you can just,
Really?
yes, because then you didn't make a decision, the coin did.
I love that.
Yeah, I'm going to start doing it.
I feel that is a good strategy in life. I mean, basically my entire Survivor game was just flipping a coin. Who should I vote tonight? It's probably gonna be wrong. Let me just flip the coin.
Yeah, flip the coin. Like, well, it was the coin.
And they can't get mad at me then. See,
nobody
people,
can get mad.
The game, you just need to flip a coin. Nobody
It's
can get
freeing.
mad.
Yeah. Okay. So when Adam told you that, Michelle, I think that there's an idol at Tribal Council, the fleur-de-lis, did you think, oh my God, Adam has lost his mind? Or did you feel like, no, I think he's onto something?
I thought he lost his mind. Honestly, it was
He makes a compelling case.
It was cute that he was sharing it with me, right? So like I appreciated that the openness of like, here's something that I truly believe has value. So I think it was valuable that he shared it with me. At the same time, I had just gotten blindsided. I had just gotten back from a tribal council where I didn't know what was going on. And I was pretty distraught. And he goes, okay, yeah, you're out. But also like, here's this other thing that I noticed at tribal. And I wasn't fully putting the piece together. I was just like, okay, Adam, like, what the fuck ever. I have bigger fucking fish to fry right now. And so for me, I was like, if you want to do it and you want to risk it, go for it. Why not? I didn't know his, he obviously had this understanding of others, maybe a South Africa season or something.
Yes.
They had done that. He didn't give me all the bells and whistles of it. And actually, I didn't even know what a fleur-de-lis was. So I was like, yeah, fleur-de-lis, go ahead. But also he had the prior knowledge of the other season. He had the prior knowledge of what the actual idol had looked like because he had seen Denise's. So he was coming in with a lot more information on whether to judge with whether or not that could be an idol than me, who was just like, what the heck ever? Like, do your thing.
Yeah.
I'm fighting for my life over here.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. When he got up to go and do it, did you think it had a chance to work?
I was like, oh my God, cringe. And so it's like social like etiquette is like so. Like for me, so people who like are doing something socially uncomfortable, it really like it hurts my soul. Yeah. So like I was in pain.
Wow.
But actually, so proud of him for watching it back.
It's worth a shot.
Yeah, it was so worth a shot. Like so proud of him watching it back. I was like, you should be so proud of yourself that you risked something. And you didn't worry about whether or not it was going to look stupid, because if it worked, you would have looked like a freaking genius. And like, I think we will probably see an idol at tribal council sooner rather than later.
I think you're right. I think you're right about that. But I think it's so interesting that you say that you're so tapped into social cues that if you see somebody who is making like a social faux pas, it's painful to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can watch people doing uncomfortable things around camp as well. And I think that it's actually a really good thing to kind of know in Survivor. If you can watch people who are making other people uncomfortable with things that they're saying, if they're talking too much, you should really know nonverbal cues, how people are making people feel. It was more on my first season because we had bigger characters than on this season. People were pretty tapped into social cues on this season. So it wasn't as noticeable, but yes.
Yeah. All right. So by the time you guys you get back to camp, you have the family visit. Your sister comes. I didn't know that you had such a close relationship with your sister. You called she's your soulmate.
Yeah, she's the best. I mean, I could not have even imagined. Well, first off, she's a year and a week older than me, so everybody's like, I can't believe you didn't bring your parents. I'm like, but my sister is who I've been my whole life with. You know what I mean? My parents too, but my sister is just different for us. And we live together. We do everything together. So, and through this experience, she's been the one to watch every single episode with me. And we've got to, it's different than my first season. I've really felt like she experienced it with me this time. And that made it so much more fun.
when you guys had the family visit and everybody comes out with all of their families and all of their children, that this was something that I felt like was really palpable in this season of about the people who are are parents and have families, and then there are people who don't have a family or children yet. Could you feel that also as something that was like connecting those other people?
Oh, it was extremely uncomfortable for me to see all of the families come out. And I just was like, this is going to be like lackluster. Like, of course, it was not lackluster to me, but to everybody else, I'm like, somebody seeing my sister come out, that's not going to, like, it's not going to get the tear ducts going. Like, thinking from the other side of the bench. And also being like, every single person here, not just is like, everybody has a significant other, not just, somebody has two fiancés, and all couples with children, and then I have my sister. So I felt super alienated that I was like, how am I connecting with these people, right? But I found ultimately the best way. People were like, how did you feel left out? And of course I felt left out, but I think you can say, hey, I want these things in my future. What's your advice for me? Like, how did you get there? So I found a different way around those conversations, but I couldn't help but think it's probably in the back of people's minds that I'm like, to have a different lifestyle than them.
Do you feel like that it made you more desirable as a person to go to the end with, because that these other people, now you've seen their children, you've seen like their family, and that it's not just that you're voting for the money to make a difference in that person's life, but also in the lives of like these little children that are running around?
I don't know. Nobody seemed to want to take me to the end. So it obviously didn't impact their decision making at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, how can you like look at somebody who has all these kids running around and not be like, yeah, I want to award them the $2 million over somebody who like does Wine Wednesdays with her sister,
Yeah. 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 Nobody even had like, children that are like, like awkward, like early teens and stuff like
No,
that, where it's like, I don't want to give it to those kids.
no, I know those brats. No, I don't like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, please,
Um,
Louise, these are all precious. They were like brought down. They were like little angels, like all of them, just like the cutest little
yeah.
puppies. I'm like, couldn't one of you guys be a terror? Like, geez.
hmm So, okay, at this point though, the game, it does seem like it shifted, and especially this is where Tony really comes out. Did you feel that when you were out there, was that like all of a sudden like, hey, what, Tony is different, or not yet?
There was conversations that were being had that I think people were playing pretty close to the chest because people were waiting for the family visit moment.
Yes.
And I think once that happened, people were released a little bit from that, like, okay, now we don't have to wait for it. It's here. Let's play balls to the wall. We're nearing the end. Like, I think that was a check for a lot of people
Yeah.
that wanted to experience that. I think also people really didn't want to go to Edge. I think people were saying, hey, it's better to be here and go with the tide than go over to the edge. Not only are you voted out, but you're also living in a shitty situation. So
Yeah.
I think both those coupled together had people playing a little bit safe. Once the family came, people were reminded, like, all right, let's take it into high gear. We've already checked off that off. And I think the game picked up pretty quickly after that.
Yeah, and I think it was a really smart idea that they had the family visit early in this season, because things really started to change after that. And we have this really crazy tribal council that comes up, and it's talked about as, okay, it's their five, and all of a sudden you're being lumped in as part of a five with Jeremy, who we know you have a relationship with, but also with Kim and Denise and with Tyson. And in your mind, was that ever a group for you?
I don't think so. I genuinely believe, I'm trying to think back to that tribal, and I don't even think I know who I was voting for before entering that tribal.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
actually, I don't think I had a name. I remember going to a tribal, and I believe it was that one, where I was like, I guess I'll figure it out when I get there.
When you vote for Tyson, I watched, they have on CBS All Access that you voted for Tyson, and you're like, you're shrugging. You're like, I don't know.
So it looked by the edit, it made it seem that I was actually sitting or being with like the Kim Tyson huddle.
Yeah, yeah.
But in actuality, there was two huddles, and I just stood actually right in the middle.
In the middle.
Because I didn't want to go over to the Kim side and then be like, okay, she's lumped in with Kim now. She's like, that she's screwed. One of you next on the chopping block. At the same time, I didn't want to betray the Kim side because that's who I think I was ultimately planning on voting with. Ultimately, Sarah or Nick pulled me in and they said, okay, you have to vote Denise.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, I'll vote Denise. I go sit down. As everybody's going up, I go to Kim. I'm like, it's Denise. Like, whisper. They must have heard or figured because at the last minute, right as I'm about to go up, Nick pulls me and is like, vote Tyson. So I think it was always going to be Tyson. They were just trying to throw me off with the Denise vote so that if I was going to tell Kim that it was going to go to Denise. But I had no idea what was going on at that point, clearly, because I was like, who the hell am I voting for? Who the hell is going home? I'm a hot mess. So I don't know.
Okay. So your relationship with Nick, I'm curious to know, like, you came in to the merge, you were on the same page. It looks like you're working with different people at that point. Is this similar to the Adam thing where it's like, hey, let's go our separate ways and we'll come back? Or did you guys get disconnected?
I don't think we were intentionally trying to go our separate ways. I think we wanted to work together, but we were just found ourselves with two different plans of who we wanted to move forward with. Him and Jeremy really never were seeing eye to eye and never really wanted to vote together, which is funny because they were both desperately like trying to align with Tony and really believed that they were Tony's number ones. Blindly, I might add, because I think to anybody, you could see that his number ones were very clearly not either of them. But Tony did a really good job of making them truly believe that he was with them by giving them a crumb, here and there. He would let them into a plan and, have them make all these big moves, almost seemingly like he was going against his real alliance, when in actuality, it was never against his real alliance. It was against these middle people. So Tony did a really great job this season of making people really loyal to him.
Did you have this clear of a read on Tony and what he was doing when you were there, or is this only with? Yes, and you would tell these guys, "Hey, Tony is not your number one here."
Yes, and it was baffling to me because I told Jeremy, I'm like, Jeremy, when I gave him my 50-50 coin, it's because I thought Tony was betraying him. I'm like, Tony is not in with you as deeply as you think that he was. At a certain point, I want to say it was this vote. We had gotten back from camp. And
he left.
When Tyson had left.
Yes.
So it was that evening. We had gotten back from camp. I was sitting with Sarah, Kim, Sophie, and they had basically insinuated that it was going to be Jeremy that night if Jeremy had not walked out. And I said, I'm sorry, what? I think they forgot I was sitting there. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? What did you just say? And I ran over to Jeremy and I said, Jeremy, they were going to write you down. Tony was about to vote you out. Like, how are you not seeing this? And Jeremy just blindly refused to believe it.
Yeah.
And it was really, really frustrating. I told him about my advantage. He goes and tells Tony about my advantage. So why would Tony want to, it was just everything that you think you shouldn't do, he went and did. It was very frustrating to be part.
And Nick was the same, that you couldn't convince Nick that Tony wasn't going to keep him?
Yeah, absolutely. I told on the Nick vote, I said to Nick, I'm like, this Denise thing is way too easy. In fact, if you read my lips at one point during my conversation, I'm like, no freaking way is Ben going to write Denise. And like, you can read my lips and see it. And I was like, Nick, this is not going the way that you think that this is going. Tony is not in with you. Like, he will choose Ben over you every time. And he really believed it and was blindsided. I'm like, how are you? I mean, come on. It was very frustrating.
I know this is your interview and not theirs, but from their perspective, why keep Tony? Like, I can understand why you would keep certain people around, but Tony was, they just feel like that he was such a big target that he was keeping them safe.
I don't know, because I think that for Jeremy, he wanted to keep somebody who was more of a target than him around, and Tony did that obviously tenfold. But it became too late, right? Because Tony had an idol, so it's like you have to find that sweet spot of when you really should be taking out Tony. He kept winning immunities, etc.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure why they couldn't see that it was a good spot to take him out. as for Nick, I'm really not sure where that blind loyalty came from. I don't know what justification he had for it. And I
And
don't
Tony's
know.
a fun guy. He's fun to be around.
Yeah, go over to his house for a barbecue, but you don't need to be
Yeah.
following him into the end.
Yeah. What was your relationship like with Tony out there?
I didn't really have much. I mean, we didn't really have much of a relationship because I just was like, I don't trust you. And he very clearly didn't trust me. I was like, I think that you're a snake in the grass. And he goes, well, I don't trust you either. We were very open about not trusting each other. Obviously we worked together during the
Yeah.
Selfie Vote when we needed to, but he knew that I didn't trust him. Now we have a great relationship. He's
Right.
probably the person who I keep in touch with the most out of anybody in the cast. So
Mhm.
yeah, he's great.
Yeah. Talk to me about the Selfie Vote, because I think that this was such a big point in the game where Tony was able to get you and Nick and Jeremy at the last second to vote out Sophie. Now, first off, did you have any relationship with Sophie?
I really connected with Sophie on a personal level out there. I think she is just wonderful. And she had a very similar experience to me coming off
Mhm.
her win, where she got a lot of backlash. And so we really connected over that. I think we always wanted to kind of be on the same page, but Sophie was pretty deeply integrated into the group where I don't
Mhm.
think she needed me. I think she would have liked to have worked with me, but she didn't need to work with me.
Yeah.
Whereas I needed to work with her, So, but I thought, we're talking about what of a mastermind Tony was in this game. But at this point in the game, the biggest threat was Sophie. She was killing it. Every
Mhm.
single challenge, she was dominating physically and mentally. She had really tight relationships. And obviously we didn't know that she had an idol at that point, but she was playing a wonderful game. And it was not, nobody, she wasn't really hiding it. I think she wanted to be seen as playing a wonderful game and playing really smart. So she was a huge threat. And I think ultimately that was her downfall.
We haven't talked much about Sarah. Did you have a good working relationship with Sarah?
Yes and no. She always was trying to feed me, maybe we'll work together. Or she would keep me out of something and I'd be like, Sarah, don't fucking keep me out of the vote again.
Yeah.
And then she would come to me and the next vote she'd be like, we were going to leave you out of it, but I know you were upset about getting left in the last one. So here's who we're voting for. So she tried to maintain
Mm-hmm.
a relationship with me when a lot of people were not. So I liked her for that. And we had a good, just easy, sarcastic banter. So that was fun, but we weren't by no means really working together at any point.
Yeah. So at this point in the game, it seems like, okay, so Denise and Kim are on board that they're going to finally cut bait with Jeremy and they're going to leave you out of this vote. They want to split votes on Jeremy and you, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Were you surprised that the women never started to talk about if that I talked to Kim and she said that she felt like that she had a relationship with Sarah and with Sophie, and Kim had a relationship with Denise. There are more women in the game than the men at this point, I believe. Was there ever any sort of a movement of the women getting together?
We really wanted to. I think that at a point we were potentially discussing it, but people had these other tight relationships with Ben and with Tony. So nobody needed to change up what they were doing. That was the problem, is that everybody felt safe enough that nobody needed to do anything other than what they were doing, which is putting one foot in front of the other. And unfortunately, for the people who weren't in that, it was very frustrating to watch, because you're trying to shake things up and say, here are some other options. Here's another configuration that you can move forward with. And they're like, nah, we got our configuration. I like this square.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, but what about a triangle?
Yeah.
What about an octagon? They're like, nope, squares are good.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so you guys vote out Sophie here, and it's such a huge move in the game. What did you feel like was going to come next after you took Sophie out? How did you feel like that things were going to change for you after that vote?
First off, I just loved the Sophie vote because they were just really, really kind of mocking us at Tribal pretty openly, and I'm like, wow, they really think they got this in the bag, right?
Who are they mocking? You and Jeremy?
Yeah, kind of. without really saying as much, they're like, yeah, somebody's going to be like, people think that they're in and they're not in. Like they're totally out and they don't even realize it. And we're like, bitch, we know what you're trying to do.
Who was saying that?
It was, the regular tribal council discussions that were going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting there like, oh my God, I hope this goes off because I like cannot wait to see them get blindsided. They're so smug. So I was just ready for it. It was just such a great moment for me. And I love Selfie, so like on a personal level, not a great moment, but on a game level, when I had been beaten down so much at that point, I was like.
But you had mistrust in Tony. How were you confident that he was telling the truth?
Because I think it was in Tony's best interest as well. And it was pretty clear. Like, I think Tony is one of the people who actually you can talk logic to. I always felt that way, that he will say, like, actually, that is logical. That makes sense. If you could have a conversation with Tony and get him to see your side, he will consider it. Whereas some people really won't consider other options. So I felt that the argument that we were coming in with and that he was coming in with, we were all sitting on a bench, me, him, and Jeremy, and they had shown the Jeremy portion. I had come down right after that. But the argument that he was pitching, I was like, this makes the most sense for Tony. And coming from somebody who I do believe is a little bit self-serving in the game and has the foresight to think a few steps ahead, I said, okay, I think he's actually going with this. And we had the numbers. We knew it. So.
Yeah. And did you talk to Nick about this as well, or just Jeremy?
I had talked to Jeremy and Tony about it, and he said he was on board. And I probably just did hey, is this really happening? And he's like, it's really happening. And I was like, okay. Sometimes you just have to be like, my gut is telling me that this is going to happen. And we had nothing else to go on. So, but I felt more confident on that vote than probably any other vote with merge.
But then after this, then Jeremy probably really loves Tony.
Yeah, and so does Nick.
Yeah. So it's really good for Tony now because you are not really interested in, staying in the Tony business for much longer.
No, and Tony had asked me, like, hey, can I have fire tokens? Again, me and him were just totally at odds. And, I'm like, nah, I don't have fire tokens.
You told him that you had an advantage of when you got to the edge of extinction.
Yeah. I was just like, and so he didn't trust me at all. He's like, that's probably lying to me. And I'm over here like, why is he asking me for my fire tokens? And I'm like, Nick, Jeremy, don't give him fire tokens. Like, what are you doing, you idiots? So like he knew that we were just never, I was a one vote kind of girl with Tony. I was never really fully in with him.
Yeah. And ultimately this is going to be the vote where Kim goes home, but we see that you're talking with Denise and with Nick about, hey, this should be a final three. Was that your plan moving forward? You try to get either originally vote Tony out at this point, and then after he won immunity, then the vote shifts to Jeremy, but then you gave Jeremy the 50-50 coin. So, but Denise and Nick, was that a real final three for you at this point?
Not really. We were always trying to pull Denise in because it was like, where does Denise really fit? It was really hard to kind of figure out where she was in the alliance. Like, who was she really working with and what was her position in that alliance? So we were always really trying to appeal to her as maybe a branch off plan. Like, hey, you don't know where, or I don't know where you are in that alliance. Like, you could come over here and have a much safer position with us, trying to appeal to like the numbers game. But she really just was having not much part in it. So, and Denise, like, you can tell when she's really committed to somebody and when she's not. And so you can kind of tell when she's blowing smoke up your ass. And so I don't even remember that conversation. I don't think it was ever even really a thing.
Yeah. So in your perfect world, what did you want to do here?
I wanted people to vote with me.
vote against Tony.
Yeah, I would have loved to get Tony out. And Kim was on board with it. Like, we could have done it. I really think this would have been the perfect time to make that move. But
yeah. Was there any talking to Kim about, okay, after Tony won the immunity, of maybe going for a different target?
I don't remember.
And is that Kim's call to put the votes on Jeremy then?
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
I think it was pretty much.
And Ben would want, and she felt like Ben could have gotten on board with voting out Jeremy at that point.
Yeah, it it spiraled pretty quickly to Jeremy, and I was like, oh my God, every single person is telling me it's Jeremy. And it's one of those situations like Julia, right? Where you're like, you
Mhm.
have to go along with it because this is the way that the tide is going. And all I can do, like, obviously, I really had nobody left in that game. So it's like, what's the point of not trying to throw him a bone if I think he's on his way out? Plus, I kind of knew that it could create enough like chaos to potentially skew the votes away from him, which I do think we did see happen.
Mhm.
He told Tony. Now I don't know, and I think it would be interesting to find out from Ben's perspective. It sounds like things did actually change because they were scared of the 50-50 coin and they didn't know if they put votes on him where we would put our votes. So it does sound like it actually did potentially affect the vote, just the
Mhm.
fear of the 50-50.
Yeah. I had asked him, I think in my interview the day after the season, if things had changed at the tribal council, and I believe he said that they didn't. I had asked him like, well, what was everybody talking about? And he said, I don't know. So I'm not sure if it did change. I'm not sure if it happened at the tribal council.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't think it changed that tribal. It might have changed at tribal. I really don't know. But
Yeah.
basically, from my understanding, Tony didn't, I think Tony really didn't want Jeremy to go at that
Hmm.
point. And I think he was able to use, like, hey, Michelle has this 50-50 coin she gave to him as
Hmm.
like enough fear of like, why would we put the votes on him to
Yeah.
actually manipulate the votes away from him?
Yeah. Makes
So,
sense.
so I don't think, I think it actually worked in a really great way there.
Hmm. So then after that tribal council, Kim goes home. You and Jeremy talk, and you seem upset with Jeremy because
Yeah.
he told people that he basically revealed your advantage, right?
I was mad at him for a lot of reasons at that point. I was very frustrated with Jeremy that he was not including me in on the votes.
Hmm.
There had been a few points before this that I think he truly believed that because he was being loyal to me and because I wasn't the one going home and he was keeping my name out of people's mouths, that was enough for an alliance member. And to me, that's not a loyal alliance member. A loyal alliance member brings you in, lets you know what's going on, and makes you feel part of the plan. And so for me, I was pretty frustrated with him. Like, I don't feel even in this. I'm
Hmm.
helping you and I'm feeling a little bit used. Like, why not tell me the plan? Why not let me know what's going on, peek under the curtains that I'm not made a fool of? So I was very frustrated with him. From a gameplay perspective and from the fact of like, you know what, if I give you an advantage, that's at my discretion for who you tell and how you approach it.
Hmm.
I was just very annoyed with him, and ultimately do think that it did what I wanted it to do, which was save him, but it happened in a way that I didn't feel comfortable with.
Yeah. Out of this entire game, who was the ally that worked with you the best? That was like, a giving and reciprocating ally, in the best way to you. Was there anybody?
Probably you all.
Yule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, came in, and unfortunately I totally fucked up. And it's my biggest regret out of both of my seasons, actually. But he came in and he was like, here's exactly what's going on at DePaul. Here's all of the relationship. Here's all of my knowledge. I mean, he would debrief me for an hour, strategize all ways that we could get the fire tokens from Wendell, always doing what was best interest for me and him
Hmm.
together. Told me about the idol that Kim had through that, was through that Sophie knew and had told him. So he gave me as much information as he had, and he was always open and transparent with me. And I knew that I could trust his word 100%. So it was probably Yule. And then when I lost that, and things just evolved. But
Yeah.
Adam was also super loyal to me as well.
Yes. Did Yule do something wrong in your mind?
No,
Yeah.
no.
It's interesting. Because you've had so many relationships with people, and you had a lot of like very correct reads on what was going to be going on, including here, at this point in the game when you're telling Sarah, like, hey, just so you know, if you go to the end with Tony, he's going to win, and she seems to not take that well. She goes back and tells everybody, hey, Michelle's trying to tell me that Tony's going to win.
I think my biggest problem in my Survivor games is that, and please, we played Secret Hitler together, and it's like the same thing, right? Like I can have the right read on people, but if I don't have the right approach or plan moving forward, then whatever my read is totally invalid. It's like I can scream it at a wall, but nothing's going to happen, right? So what I really would need to work on, and what I think I've failed at in the past is taking my read and out how to use it to effectively get a better plan across. So unfortunately, listen, if I play again, that's just what I would need to work on.
Yeah. It's funny. It's like that. I feel like that you're so intuitive. Like I feel like that you are able to like, okay, here's like what the facts are, but you're maybe not able to spin it to the people in the terms that they can understand, because maybe you just know it. And it's like that it's not making sense to put it in the other people's perspective.
I
You
think
need
it's
like a translator.
I think I'm lacking persuasion skills,
Hmm.
and I'm not sure how you can get better at that. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I found it time and time again. So I have to change something because I'm doing something wrong.
I don't know. It's interesting. It's very interesting. All right. So ultimately, you're gonna end up with you and Jeremy are gonna be the two targets here. They're going to split the votes against you guys. You're going to end up using your 50-50 coin here. And Jeremy is looking a little bit like, hey, you want to play it on me again? But as Stephen pointed out, that I think that you probably, if you played on Jeremy, you're going to go home. Were you aware of that in the moment?
Yep, they
Yeah.
basically told me, "Hey, we're splitting the votes. If you play it on Jeremy, then you're next out."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Well, why would I do that?" Also, Jeremy was very vocally against the 50-50 coin. He was like, "Why would you buy this?" I was like, "Jeremy, I have an advantage." He's like, "What is it?" I'm like, 50-50 coin. He's like, "What the hell is that? Why would you buy that? That's a trash advantage. It means nothing."
Trash advantage.
So yeah, he's like, "Why would you leave it up to fate? This is a stupid advantage." Like, so I'm like, all right, well, if it's a stupid advantage, then I might as well play it for myself. Because honestly, how stupid would it be if I played it for him? It worked for him, and then I went in knowing that, that's just not how I wanted to leave. I tossed him a bone in the last one. He chose not to use it, but I do think it saved him, and that's as much as I could do at that point.
You should have played it for him and then flipped it and got not safe.
Oh my God, that would have been horrible. Oh, well, I guess it would have been the same result.
Same thing. And it's like, Jeremy, I tried.
I tried.
Yeah.
Can I have your vote now? No,
Yes.
You're going to give it to Natalie? Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. I really did like your moxie to ask Jeff, can I keep the 50-50 coin?
I don't remember doing that, but why not?
Yeah. Right. Did they put that on eBay?
I have no idea.
Or is it going to go to Ghost Island and be a 100% coin?
Safe.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be a two-sided safe coin. It's matured. So at the final six now, it's something that you were very upset about your performance in the immunity challenge at the final seven with the basketball. And then you end up coming back in a big way. You're going to win the next two immunity challenges, including the Domino challenge, which that I remembered, Julia was the winner of that challenge from Caron. Did that help you that you had done that challenge basically before?
It helped me mentally because I was really, really good at that challenge my first time. And I had it I was like running, I was doing it really, really fast. And I remember I had been the first person to knock them over, and it got all the way to the end and one fell off the side. So mentally, when I saw it, I was like, oh, I remember being really good at that. That boost of confidence sometimes is like all you need. Because when I was doing the one with the strings, I don't know if you remember, it might have been one or two before that. I remember being like, I was horrible at this one, and that's not a good way to lead in mentally in the challenge. So I think it helped me, yeah.
Yeah, so you got immunity, and also that's the same round where Nick got the advantage, where he was able to put a penalty on somebody, and he did it to Ben. Well, did you guys talk through more about like what else you could do with that? Because it didn't seem like Ben didn't win the challenge, but that it seemed like that maybe that Ben, you've talked about this, Adam's talked about it, that he would get paranoid at certain times about things. Was there like a lot more talk about who put punishment on me?
I think that, so a lot of people are like, why would you put it on Ben rather than on Tony at that point? Because Tony had won a bunch of challenges. But like Ben was so at this point unhinged. Like he was pretty hurt. So he had been not sleeping a lot.
Yeah.
And, especially with the Jeremy situation, he was just pretty triggered around camp and starting to kind of lose his marbles a bit. And so like I just really wanted to just like I knew I was probably the next to go. So for me, I was like, I just want to like stir the pot and just see how worked up we can get Ben. And I know that's like so fucking stupid. But at that point I was just being petty and I was like, let's just
Mm-hmm.
so I just wanted to get him upset.
Did it get him upset?
He actually handled it quite well. It was really
Yeah.
ultimately I won, so I wasn't that disappointed, but it didn't work the way I wanted it to.
Yeah, because I would have thought that he would have started like accusing different people about who put this in, but maybe he just thought it was from the edge of extinction.
Well, I guess he told me later that he saw me giving coins to Nick.
Yeah.
Like he tried to do it coy, so he thought it was me always.
Okay. Well, yeah, you were immune.
That's fine. It worked for me. Poor
Yeah.
Nick.
Yes, that for Nick ends up getting voted out here, and I was talking with Ethan about this round, and I guess that it's like the Denise's going home at the final six. I guess was like a bigger act than it seemed like on the show.
Oh yeah, it was this whole sob story of like she's given up and so like as much as I had said, like she's given up, she's thrown in the towel, she was not strategizing at camp at all. I would keep trying to pull her, like, don't give up. Like there's hope for us. Like I'm at the same point as you. Like, don't give up. Me and you can come together and we can somehow do something. Like, don't give up. I need you here with me. And like, I thought I was giving her a pep talk, but ultimately she was playing me. But I think I had said I really did think it was going to be Nick, and I think I don't know. I kept thinking if I were Denise, why would I want the jury to see me saying those things and behaving that way?
Yeah.
Even if you're playing it up for them, right? That playing it up is one thing, but to so throw yourself and be like, I'm done. Like right before at the end of the game, it looks really bad. If you do get to the final three, then that's the perception that they have of you. So I'm like, if she's doing that, that's a little unwise,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It was really over the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And couldn't they just vote out Nick anyway? I really don't understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So why go through all of it? And Nick was pissed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nick was pissed.
Yeah, that's what Ethan was saying about when Nick got to the edge of extinction. He was not happy about the whole
But
thing.
why? Why do it?
Yeah.
It didn't make sense. It really didn't. It was bizarre.
I guess you never know if somebody has an idol or what. But when it's the edge of extinction challenge to come back, and Natalie comes back, and now it seems like I would have thought that you guys did have like a pre-existing relationship that was beyond just, I mean, I guess you had spent a couple days together at Cele, but when Natalie comes back in, it's like you guys are like very close friends.
Yeah. So basically the narrative around camp was as soon as Nick went out, an edger is going to come in and it's us against them. And I was like, since when, bitches? Because it's been you guys against me for the past week and a half. I've been totally alienated.
Mm-hmm.
And why do you think suddenly I'm going to be ride or die for you? Like that makes no sense. If somebody from Edge is getting a second chance, but also I knew I was getting a second chance by the edger coming in. Finally, somebody may actually want to talk to me when nobody's wanted to talk to me up to this point. So I knew maybe I could shake things up. I knew that there was people who I definitely wanted to come in. There was definitely people who I didn't want to come in. And when I saw Natalie, I said, that's a neutral party. Like yes, we've worked together a little bit. I never voted her out. Great. Let's ride or die this out till the end. So I was pumped. And I think she was pumped just to have somebody who also wanted her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, in hindsight, Wendell is like right there to potentially come back from the edge of extinction. I feel like that would have been very fun to watch where Wendell comes back into the game at final 6. Do you feel like that you guys end up like back to the wall? Bonnie and Clyde, are you guys now like having to
Shooting our
work
way out.
together as a
Yeah,
functional pair?
probably. Honestly, if he had come back in, I definitely would have been working with him. And I think it would have also been really beneficial because Natalie came in from Cell 1.0, so she never had a relationship with anybody besides negative relationships with Ben
Right.
and Denise. Whereas if Wendell had come in, he actually had a really good relationship with Sarah and Tony. So maybe things could have happened. It would have been fun with him coming back in and maybe like, fighting it out that way in the end. But ultimately girl power wins out, and I had my bad Jersey bitch by
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. You're going to win the immunity challenge also when Natalie comes back. Did it just come back to you? It's the same puzzle that you ended up doing in co-wrong, or at least a similar puzzle as you did. Was it exactly the same? Like, hey, did you know it from co-wrong, or
No,
is
I
it?
thought it was harder than co-wrong because there were like kind of like burner stacks. So there was like a stack that you could have them. Basically, the way that the strategy behind it is that you want to have them. Once you get 3 level, then it probably means that the rest are going to be level. But on
Yeah.
this one, they would be off by maybe just a hair, just a touch, and then
Okay.
you realize that you have to restructure all of them. So it was actually much harder. It took me a lot longer this time than the other times. But it's just a spatial awareness thing. I'm really not sure. People are like, how do you practice that? I'm like, I'm not sure there's actually a way that you can
Yeah.
practice unless you get your hands on the puzzle and just try for a bit.
When did you know you were going to kick the puzzle again?
As soon as I saw it.
As soon as they said that, like when they show you, like, all right, so this is you're going to go over
The
this, and
three-tier
then you're going to,
puzzle.
yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
yes, come to mama. We
Yeah.
are doing it again. Kung Fu Mish coming out.
Yes, I told my son, my 6-year-old, that I was going to be podcasting with you today. I said, "Do you have any questions you want me to ask Michelle?" He said, "Yeah, ask her why does she always kick a puzzle?"
Why not?
That made an impression on them.
Tell them why not. If you have a chance to kick a tall object that will fall, you should always do it.
You should always do it.
Well, let me caveat that with that you don't have to pick up, because I don't have to clean it up. Somebody else has to do it.
Somebody else has to clean up the puzzle. Smart. So after the season, we had gotten to talk. We went through about the decision to potentially, end up either voting for Denise or send Sarah and Denise to a fire making challenge. You guys ultimately, decided to vote out Denise because it felt like that Sarah there was a at least a little bit of a relationship there.
Yeah.
To vote out Ben.
Sarah had said too, like, oh, I thought that I had a stronger relationship with a strong enough relationship with Natalie. We saw it in the back that she would tell me if whatever. Like she had mentioned
Natalie sent her an advantage also.
Exactly. So I think that they had a strong relationship. I had a fair, strong relationship with Sarah. I don't know exactly how their relationship formed, but in general, when we had went to her and said like, hey, it's you or Denise basically right now, like, will you vote with us the next round? She said, yeah, I'll vote with you the next round. We'll vote out Ben. Whether she was blowing smoke up our asses or not, I mean, good on her if she was, but ultimately we did see that come into fruition either way. So I'm not sure what came first, the chicken or the egg.
Yeah. When you guys were at the final 5, were you concerned that Sarah maybe wasn't with you guys?
Oh yes, I was very concerned. She was coming to us like with her heart on a platter. She's like, I don't want to do this, but I need to do this, and like I know for my game that I really, really need to vote out Ben right now. And so we had hoped, but I knew that if she was lying, that it was me. So like it was very frustrating watching Natalie play that for herself, because so clearly it was going on me and not on Natalie. And I was like, why not just play it on me then? And let's be safe. Why leave it to chance that we would why leave it to chance that Sarah would be with us? But at that point, you know, she had fought her way there for so long that she wasn't going to give up an idol at that point. So.
Yeah. From your perspective, why did Sarah tell you it was important to make that move and vote out Ben?
We had been talking, beefing up so heavily. I mean, we were in Sarah's ear every minute of every day from the minute that Natalie got in, and me even prior to that, saying public enemy number one needs to be Tony. Tony's going to win this at the end of the day, and if you're not going to vote out Tony, then you better start working on your resume, because let me tell you, this is what they think of you on the other side, and you're not looking good. You're not looking like somebody who is going to take away the million pretty much against anybody who you sit with at this point, unless you do something. You're just waltzing your way to the end with people who are blindly loyal to you, and you're not really doing anything that shakes things up by just picking us off. So if you want to prove that you have some chops, do something and leave Tony out of it so that he looks like a chump, and so that you have something to say at the end that you did yourself without him, because he sure as hell has moves without you. So that was our pitch, and I think it stuck with her. We started to say too, like, and if you really think that you played the same game as Tony, then you need to start talking to the jury about that. And I think that's where the gender bias conversation had come up. We started saying, like, you need to speak up more at Tribal, because you're never going to win the way that you're playing. So.
Were you able to get information from Natalie about how people felt about you on the edge of Extinction?
Yeah, she told me that everybody was really, really bitter at me, that basically all of my like pregame alliance stuff, people were like throwing me under the bus, saying that the only reason that I got there was due to pregame alliances, that Parv like hated me and was so mad at me. So yeah, the pretty much the feedback that I got was mainly all negative.
Yes. Was that accurate, or was it people blowing off steam?
I think it was the real perception. I think people were, I don't know. People look for reasons why they got voted off and why their Survivor game ended. And especially a lot of those early vote offs, I was pretty much the reason for. So people like Parvati, who are pretty vocal and who were probably burned by me, were using my prior relationships as the reason that she left. So I get it, but I think there was a little bit of from my understanding, kind of clicks going on the edge.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of tension. And so there was kind of groups of people who would choose some latch on to something and maybe, continue moving forward with that narrative in a negative way. And that's at least from what I gather from, everybody basically seems to be accurate.
Yeah. Did you feel like your final tribal council was were you happy with how it came out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I did a really good job of talking about my strengths in the game and narrating my storyline. And I think that's one of the most important things when you get to the end. See, you know what? Tony's story spoke for itself. All he had to do was throw a few funny one-liners in there, and he won the game. Natalie's story spoke for itself. She was the first person voted out. She, with her strength, acquired all of these fire tokens, sent these advantages in, and manipulated the storyline that was happening in the game from the edge. Ultimately, her strength won her way back in, and then she had all of these advantages getting herself to the end. Her storyline spoke for itself. My storyline did not speak for itself. It was a jumbled up mess if you're watching it from the jury. But from my perception, there was things that needed to be told and said, and there was a storyline there. Sure, it didn't look like the other two, but it was my story, and it was also a strong gameplay. So I really wanted to go in and say, yeah, okay, this is you guys know this shit, but here's the shit about my game that you guys don't know. And I just really wanted to do myself the justice of like making sure that people really understood what I did as well. So I felt proud of it, and ultimately I didn't get any votes, but I don't necessarily feel like I am a total loser.
Yeah. Well, you are definitely not a total loser, especially after having a Survivor win on your resume. I kind of feel like that maybe your best bet would have been if Tony and Sarah both got to the end with you, and you could have been like that third person that was like, I told you all that they were lying to you. You didn't listen. And I'm telling you, and it's like kind of like Sandra in Heroes versus Villains.
I think another great thing about that dynamic as well is that would split the votes, because you know them and Denise, some people who are pretty ride or die for Sarah, those votes would go to Sarah, and then ultimately, where do the votes shake out for Tony? Where do the votes? Ethan had said he could never vote with somebody who he never played with. How could he vote for Tony? He's actually played with me. So you then have to look at like, okay, how would those votes really actually happen? I think I would have had a better shot in that trio,
Yes.
but ultimately, no matter what, if I was sitting at the end with Tony, I would have lost. So coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Michele, will you play Survivor again?
If they'll have me.
I think you will play again,
Really?
and I think you'll play again. And I wonder that could your third time look like a Sandra Game Changers time out there, where you end up playing a game where you come out and don't go as far, but maybe end up having a game that's drastically different, and then people say like, "Oh, Michele has really arrived as a player."
I don't know what my game would be like. You know what? I'm not somebody who can be inauthentically me. Like, I don't think I can go in and try to be more strategic or more anything than what I am. So I'm not sure
Mm-hmm.
that if I went back, I would play much different. But
Yeah.
I don't know if they would ever ask me back. But
I think they definitely would. I really think that they definitely would. I think that you made such a strong showing in this season, and I know you've had like a strained relationship with the show. Tell me if this metaphor makes sense. I feel like that you and Survivor, at least coming into this season, was like you and Wendell. It was like, oh, me and Survivor, we kicked it, but I don't know about like how we are now. It's a weird relationship. It didn't necessarily go the way I wanted it to, but then you came out, and then were able to, have it go a lot better this time, or not
it's
not better. Well, I mean, worse, but better.
worse, but better.
Yeah,
Exactly. I don't know if I would sum it up as the Wendell analogy because I don't know where me and Wendell stand right now.
you're
But
friends. It's good.
we are. It's good. It's good. No, but I do think like I think my first season I had won, but I actually like left feeling like I had kind of lost, and I
Yeah.
think it's really unfortunate. And a lot of people don't really understand that because they say if you won, you won. Take the million and run, and don't cry into your $100 bills, Michele. Like shut up and stop.
Hmm.
But I
Yes.
didn't feel that way. Like emotionally, it didn't feel like a win to me. And what's interesting about this game is that I didn't win, but emotionally, I do feel like I won. And I feel really satisfied with it. So I feel full circle about my experience, and I'm glad I got to win and I got to lose, and I felt really bad and I felt really good. So I've experienced all ends of the Survivor spectrum, and so if I do get to play again, I have no idea what's in store for me. Maybe I'll play, maybe because I played both extremes, maybe I'll just land somewhere flopped in the middle and I'll be like, well, that was lackluster. Maybe that's the only hope that I have.
Well, yeah, it's like the more you keep chasing it, the harder it is to, get the desired result that you want. And
Exactly.
do you feel like that even Jeff has come around? That I feel like that you were vocal at the time of like that you felt like that, Jeff wasn't excited about you. Do you feel like that he's come around also?
I do. I have like a really funny, good relationship with Jeff, and I've always felt that we have had a good relationship. But obviously, after Co Wrong, I was like,
Hmm.
oh, does Jeff hate me? What's happening? But I think we have like a fun banter, and he thinks I'm like a silly idiot. So yeah, we have fun. I love.
Yes.
So I am such a fangirl.
Well, Michele, I think that you're so much fun. It was great to have you back on the show this season. And I always really appreciate when I get the opportunity to talk with you. That you really, had in the Best of Robin's podcast, I closed the show with your last appearance on the Love Know It Alls.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I honestly have so much fun every time I get to come out on here and hang out with you. I mean, you are the best of the best in the podcasting world, so it's an
I
to
really
be
appreciate that.
honor to be slotted up, on this post-season podcast here. So I'm very
Yes.
happy.
Okay, well, I know you have to run. Tell people that this is going to go up after Wednesday, but what do you do on Wine Wednesday?
So we pair with wineries. So my aunt actually has a place in Napa, Yountville, and a lot of the wineries right now are suffering due to COVID. And so we are just basically partnering with them and featuring their wines so people can basically taste with them from afar. So we do a little Wine Wednesday. We also bitch about what's going on this week that we're frustrated with. So it's a
In
wine
your personal
bottle
life, yes.
in our personal life. And then we have a few survivors on. We don't do anything of what you do where you ask like strategic questions. We basically just shoot the shit as I progressively get drunker. So it's a
Yes.
really fun time. Luckily, the wineries put up with our antics, and luckily, survivors somehow keep wanting to come on. So it's fun.
Yeah. Okay, Michelle, where can people keep up with more of what you're doing, Wine Wednesday and everything?
Okay, so I'm on Instagram as Mishfits. I'm on Twitter as Mishfits. And I play a bunch of games everywhere. So hopefully stay tuned for
Yeah,
that.
you're a big gamer.
I am. And I just got a Twitch, and I don't know what that means, but people kept saying I needed one. So I'm going to try.
What will you do on Twitch?
I'm not sure. I don't
You
really
play
know.
video games.
Yeah, but you can play also like board games, like you do things like Secret Hitler, etc. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping, I mean, I'm such a gamer and I'm so competitive, even if I suck at games. So hopefully I will be venturing into something along those lines as well. So hopefully we could play Secret Hitler.
Yes. Well, I had the best time getting to play the game the other day on PG's Twitch stream. So
I
that
know,
was
and
that was very fun.
I'm glad that we were together rather than
Yes, it was very fun to be on the same side, and now I know what it's like for you to know you know everything, and then people don't believe you. So I'm happy to say I was one of the few.
If I do go back, Rob, can you help me?
I'll try. I'll try. All right, Michelle, thank you so much for all the time. This was so great to catch up.
Thank you, Rob. You're the best.